Good evening, everybody. Thank you to everyone for attending this meeting on Thursday, the 11th of January 2023. My name is Councillor Adi Riggett and I am the chair of this panel. Councillor Roy Lees is the vice chair. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Members in the chamber, when you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent? We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the way you came in. Apologies.
Long received, Chair.
Thank you. I believe we do have Councillor Ainsworth with us on Teams though. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. If you have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Have there been any declarations received? Okay, thank you. Move on. Item 2, minutes of the meeting 23rd of November 2023 of the Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel, which are pages 3 to 6 in your pack. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of the minutes? No? Everybody seems content. The recommendation is that the minutes of the meeting be approved. Item 3, Quarter 2, Performance Panel 23-24, Main Agenda Pack, pages 3 to 22. Councillor Peter Wilton, Executive Member for Resources, is in attendance to be assisted by Polly Patel, Performance and Partnerships Manager. I invite Councillor Wilson to present the report.
Took a while to warm up, but I'm on. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, this is the Quarter 2 Performance Monitoring Report, and as it says in the executive summary there, we can see that of the key projects, this corporate strategy projects rather, performance is at 90% that are rated as complete or as green, and that we have 2 projects that aren't, one rated amber and one rated red, and then likewise performance is strong in terms of the indicators and key service delivery measures, which again are performing on target or within 5% of threshold. So we'll just, if I may, Chair, just briefly go through some of those items, if that's okay. The first that we see, and I always do this, Chair, I must admit, I always do this at Cabinet. I always sort of just go focus on the ones that are outstanding. I suppose one day we should do a nice little review of all the ones that are going very well and sort of pat ourselves on the back. But I suspect that you and the members are probably more interested in the ones that are off track than on track. So we'll focus on there, which is the first is the local plan. And you can see that's rated as red. And I think this is something now that we've been reporting on for quite a long time. And it's sort of always veered between being rated as amber or being rated as red, and clearly that is a major concern for the council because we need the local plan in place, particularly with the announcement just recently about the planning service and the fact that we've had a number of applications refused at this council and then overturned on appeal, and now we're being ticked off for those being bad decisions, which, as bizarre as I find, it only underlines the need to get a local plan in place for the future. That's the point, because without the plan, you can't do anything. So we need this. The key element as to why this is the case, why it is rated as red, is of course because we're working with 2 other partners whose views of the world have been probably slightly at odds with ours in terms of the pace of which we want to get the plan in place. And that's not being critical of the 2 partners. That's not being critical of the 2 partners. Although obviously that was South Ribble interfering. And not being critical of the partners, South Ribble or Preston, but they're obviously just like us, their duty is to represent their residents and do what's best for their area, and sometimes that's slightly at odds with us. Being the planning appeal, which took I think 18 months to get a decision on in South Ribble, which we finally have, so I think things have moved there, and likewise I think Preston are beginning to move, which is what the report basically says in terms of the refocused effort to get this through. So we're hoping to pick this back up. We absolutely must pick it back up. I think that will be also assisted by our new director as and when she starts, which is soon as well. So I have just, we have, like I said, we discussed this a number of times, but it doesn't mean that just because it's continually rated as red or amber, we just sort of shrug our shoulders. We are working very hard to actually make progress because the plan is fundamental to to what the council does in the future in a number of respects, not just housing numbers. The other key project rated as amber is the improvement to our council buildings, and again, this is something that's been reported in the past. The main issue here is the work that was done at one point to look at redoing the heating systems and redoing some of the actual fabric work on the fabric of the building. And then you've got your more, what I'd call, lower level maintenance issues, like your state of your windows and window frames and the sort of, those sort of regular maintenance issues. And unfortunately, I think probably what some have been blurred and delayed because we're sort of waiting for more substantial work to be done. And when will it be done? So that's what it says in terms of the action required there, is that the accommodation working group has now been set up to get on with these, what I'd call the more day-to-day maintenance issues. The bigger stuff, well, that might have to be put back a little bit, maybe it will, that depends, but we've make sure we have a maintenance programme that continues. So while that's amber, as I say, that should actually be able to actually pick up pace now the working group are on it, so hopefully that'll pick up. So they're just the two projects which stand out as not being rated as green. In terms of the indicators, we can see there the number of people participating in volunteering is slightly off target there at Q2. We're on 29 as opposed to a target of 36. But what we will see is that's significantly better than this time last year. And obviously this time last year, still coming out of the COVID pandemic and getting back to normal, volunteering numbers did go down, and that's totally understandable. So there does seem to be a trend to people coming back to being more engaged and more active. And clearly we're working with DWP rather, and through the employment network to actually get more people engaged. And I think we'll see that hopefully coming back in the right direction as we go through the year. In addition to that, as a council, we've sort of done I won't say a relaunch, but hopefully reinvigorate the time credits initiative and so on, and get people back engaged with that and aware of what that has to offer. And hopefully, again, that will see some benefits in the sort of second half of the year as we continue to measure it. Going through to page 15, we've got a number of visits to council. Try and speak properly, Chair. Sorry, number of visits to council leisure centres, and we can see there that again the target is an ambitious one of 234,000. I think there's an note missing there, and clearly we're below that. But again, we are better than last year, and I think that is worth noting because again, it's the same principle of volunteering. It's people post-COVID out of the habits, out of the sort of the routines of going back into using leisure centres and so on. And also, as it says in the report there, which has to be factored in as a major issue at the moment, we've obviously got the Brinschool bath. So clearly, we're not operating on the same footprint as we were in terms of facilities. So that has to be factored in. But I think more importantly about the leisure centres, and I know it's something Jennifer and Bev are working on, is to actually look at how we make them sustainable in the future, because leisure centres across the country are facing real challenges, and that's been a combination of attendees, but also the whole energy costs going up like mad as they have done in the last 12 months. And it's how do we make our leisure centres more sustainable, and how do you look at what's popular, as it were, what people want from a leisure centre, and maybe the traditional offers not quite no longer as relevant, and therefore we're coming down to those actions about looking at doing, adapting lessons, swimming lessons, adapting the offer. And I know that I think we've got a working group next week that's meeting next week again to discuss this in more detail. So it's really, we all sat around this table at full council not that long ago with the financial package to support the leisure centre. And obviously that's, not necessarily to do with this target, but more importantly is how do we actually make it sustainable, full stop, which does link to this target, because of course more people through the doors is the key element to that. So that's the hopefully leisure centre to say it's not that it's not doing awfully or anything like that, but we just need to look at those challenges and how do we improve it. The next one off target is the one that baffles, amuses, etc., which is the employment rates. And the reason I say that is because we are aware that the employment rate has gone down compared to pre-COVID levels, but Whitehall is sort of such an outlier at 64% compared to the regional average of 73.8. I'm yet to understand. I can understand all the reasons why the employment rate may have gone down, such as ill health, COVID, all those things. But I don't understand why Whitehall is so different than perhaps the regional average. So it does say more work's being done there, Chair, and more work is being done. I think we've had some initial actual sort of responses there, but to me, there's still something not quite right with that figure. I'm not sure what it is, but we will continue to work and try and find out and ascertain why. Because it doesn't reflect on the other side, it doesn't reflect in unemployment rates, and it doesn't reflect in any other indicators. So that one we just need to work out and dig away more at. But clearly it is off target, so we have to report it as such. On that, Chair, I don't think there's anything else particularly that I was concerned about or thought was necessary to highlight in my opening remarks, but obviously happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have any comments, Councillor Lees, or questions? Anybody else? Councillor Snape?
I just wondered, I think on page 12, because obviously I think the report was dated in November, I think, when it went to Cabinet. I think it was page 12, did the the time credits event take place, the 10-year anniversary? And because I don't think, because it says about a communication plan being put in place. Just wondered if that happened, because I don't think we've heard about it. If possible, thanks.
It's all right here, actually, Councillor Snape, because I'm hoping someone will know.
Celebration event because of what happened in upstairs. We did have an officer level event with tempo time credits and to talk about the spend and developments. We didn't have the celebration event. Hopefully we're going to get it once everything's okay upstairs sometime in the next couple of months.
And on that, we'll have a communications plan with it, so we'll make sure that members know.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Lees?
It says unemployment is low. Is that a typing error? Should it be employment is lower?
That's right, because unemployment is lower than the national average. So no, that's right. That's what I'm saying about nothing tallies with the employment, with the actual employment rate being so low doesn't tally with the fact that unemployment is lower than the national average. That's the point I was making, Councillor Lees, is that every other indicator would tell you that employment rates are relatively high. But for some reason, we get this report that it's at 65%, which I just don't understand. My guess is it might be a post office horizon level bug in the system in the report. You know, it's not calculating it right.
On that. Councillor Ainsworth, on Teams, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just a couple of questions. Just regarding the commercial activity manager, I know they've not been in post for that long. How is it going? Have we had an increase in numbers through the leisure centre?
It's a challenge with the leisure centres, and since she's been in post, she's been occupied quite a bit looking at how to manage Bryn School closing and the impact it's having on all seasons. But having said that, she's also done some work around new classes and some activities down Westway. But I think it's important to remember that we aren't where we would like to be with leisure centres, but around about 75% of the activities that were happening before COVID in some form or another are actually happening within our leisure centres. So I think we shouldn't focus all on the doom and gloom, because there is some good stuff happening as well there.
Did you have a further question, Councillor Ainsworth?
Yeah, just one second one. I've noticed in the leisure centre in the all seasons in the swimming pool bit especially, some of the equipment is it's 20 odd years old. I mean, I remember the slides still being there when I was doing swimming lessons 20 odd years ago. Are we going to look at possibly replacing some of the old equipment with some newer up to date stuff?
The answer to that is yes, it is looking dated. And we've had a survey done by a company whose name at the minute escapes me, Alliance, that's come up with all sorts of various options for all three of the centres. So we have done some little changes already. So the gym equipment has been replaced. That was done quite early on. and some of the fitness studios are being redone. So it is being looked at, but we want to get it right and we want to plan it properly, because obviously it would be quite a lot of money to do it. So we need to do it right and in a considered way.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who was first. Either Councillor Finn, Councillor Snape, between yourselves.
Just a quick question, a couple of quick questions. Council leisure centres, that target there, is that pre-COVID, based on pre-COVID numbers? So it's obviously it's a bit less, but we're getting better, and I'm assuming January would have had a push on them numbers. So it's in a better position than what it says there. That's okay. Thank you.
Snape.
I just wondered on paragraph 39, page 11, the percentage of 16 to 17-year-olds not in education, employment or training. I know this I think it came up at informal cabinet, didn't it, about having problems getting the data from the county council. Has that been resolved? Or?
Yes, we did get the data, didn't we? But it was at a later date than the report was published, and our performance is better than the 3% target. I think, isn't that right, Polly? But Polly might be able to give you the most up-to-date figure, Councillor Snape, if that's okay.
Yes. So at the moment, so we've got the data. It came after the papers went out. So I can confirm that at the end of Q2, the NEAT figure for Chorley is 1.9%, which is better than Q1 and is on target.
Any further questions, anybody? Okay, I've just got a couple, if I may. Thank you. I agree. The employment rate number doesn't quite tie in with all the rest yet. I have seen some data sets elsewhere, and this does stand out even in that broader picture too. So it's important we know what's happening as soon as we can. So I suppose my question really is, when would this next be coming to scrutiny, or how would we, if you find out there's a discrepancy with the data or you start to work out what the problem is in a couple of weeks' time, when would we find out? How do we bring that back here?
The next time it'll be obviously reported in the next quarterly performance report, so that'll be the end of the third quarter, which will be, which cabinet will that be? March, is it? Don't want to say whenever. So we'll be looking at it won't be March, will it? It'll be sooner than that, actually. It should be, yeah. So we would know if we found something, or when we find it, or if we don't find it. The point is that's when it'll be next reported. So I suppose the answer to then is when that fits in with your, if you want to scrutiny to look at it again in terms of the performance panel, it would follow that, wouldn't it? It would follow the next report to cabinet, I presume. But I'm happy whenever, if we know. You know.
I think that's fine. I suppose where you see where I'm coming from is if we do find there is something that is worthy of further scrutiny, the earlier we look at that, the earlier we're working towards a solution. So I'm happy for it to come next quarter, but if you decide there's value of something to look at beforehand, you know, you can certainly let us know about that. And I think my only other question, because there is some overlap between this and the next report, I think I'm going to save some of the questions, and you can still get Councillor Wilson to answer them, but I'll ask them at that section. And I suppose it's just reflecting back on the local plan item. I absolutely agree. It's one of the most important things the council faces at the moment is getting a local plan that was satisfied and is defendable. And I do recall that at the performance panel meeting in March, when this was presented at Amber, I think unfortunately you weren't available. So I think it was just presented by an officer as opposed to a member. But we did have quite a robust discussion about was it Amber or was it red at that point, and we were satisfied it was Amber. Unfortunately, it has fallen to red. So I suppose what I'm trying to get at really is, if I don't want the council to be afraid of marking something as red and thinking that's going to be a problem. It's better we recognise that if we potentially are at that point or we're close to that point, that we're not afraid to say that, and it's not a negative to say that here in scrutiny. It reflects where we are and enables us to move forward potentially quicker or not. And I suppose the final point on this is, I know we have a lot of things that look at the local plan, but is there any value that scrutiny could offer to that at any point, whether it's retrospectively how we got in this position rather than the actual local plan decides to allocate that piece of work of it. I don't necessarily need an answer now, but I suppose if our local plan has got to a point where we're in this position, we would ideally try and avoid that happening again, whatever the reasons. If there's lessons to be learned, this is probably the easiest place to have that conversation at some point.
Yeah, yes, I think there's two things there, Councillor. On your first point about rating between amber and red, without going into the details of a previous report, maybe about 2 years ago, I was actually it was one of those where we were meeting with officers and they were between the two, and I said put it in red. So I'm scared or bothered or disturbed by no. I mean, I wouldn't unfairly put something marked as red because we should do it fairly, but that's the point. We should do it fairly. And if we've underperformed, we've underperformed. If it's our fault, it's our fault. A lot of times it's other circumstances and external factors as well, but we should be clear and honest saying that. So no issue there about being afraid of that or coming to this committee or any other committee to discuss it and go through it. It is fact. You are where you are. I think the key thing with the local plan is obviously, as I said, getting it now in place. I think one of the major stumbling blocks, or one of the, not stumbling blocks, I should rephrase that very quickly, one of the major issues that may delay it further is another round of extensive public consultation, which obviously we need to look at and we need to do, but it's how, when, how long, and so forth. So, there are various stages in the plan process, which there is some flexibility around from government in terms of what you do and to what extent, and I think we have to have those conversations as well. So my view would be, obviously, we do have a new director starting shortly. Obviously, her role from day one is going to be to pick this up at pace and drive it through. I want that to be done quickly. I want that to be done effectively. Is there a role for scrutiny and then looking back at it and saying what happened? Probably, yes, there is. What I don't want to do is that to be done presently and distract from the getting on with it. But once we are in that stage where the plan's got more weight and we get into the point of adoption, then by all means, I think that's perfectly legitimate. I do quote Councillor Bradley on this though, which is, remember, the former leader of Chorley Council, who was on your side of the political divide, saying it takes a lot longer than you want. It's very frustrating. It costs a lot more than you want, and you don't get your outcomes that you all hope for at the start. So I suspect we'll probably reach the same conclusion after a scrutiny review of this one. But there we go. By all means, if that's what if that's what the group feel, then by all means look at it.
Thank you. I think we should have a look at that point, and if we decide it's of value, and if we decide it's not, but I think we wouldn't be doing our role if we didn't ask that question at that point. If there's no further questions at this point, I think we'll say that at the end of the discussion on this item, and please can we note the report and thank Councillor Wilson for his time. Item 4, performance focus, communities and leisure, pages 23 to 34. I nearly gave you a very short report then. I invite Councillor Bev Murray, Executive Member for Early Intervention, to present this report. The Director of Communities is in attendance to assist.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, members have had sight of the report, and I'm sure I've read it thoroughly. And I was just going to pick up on some main areas of concern, 2 of which have already been covered by Councillor Wilson. So, obviously, happy to take questions on as we move on. But 2 other points I'd like to raise: that the home energy scheme and the support for families and young people. These are relatively new posts, and referrals are picking up, but they just aren't showing at the minute. In fact, the home energy scheme is proving quite popular, which is a good thing. I also want to draw attention to the food inspections, which is worse than last year. We are still in line with the Food Standard Agency targets, and we should be corrected ourselves by the end of the year. But the fundamental problem there is that we have had extreme difficulty finding environmental health officers because they can earn much more money being self-employed. So I think they were the main ones covered by PISA, the Leisure Centre, because that came in to the Directorate after the last performance panel. But I'm quite happy to take questions on any part of the report.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Lees? Any questions, anybody? No? I'll kick off with a couple and give people time to think about it, because that would help. I think the areas I wanted to look at, a couple of different areas. First of all, looking at the leisure centres, I think, is it paragraph 8? It talks about where it talks about the structure and the different responsibilities. And it says the board meet at least every 6 months to monitor performance against budget and service specification. I don't know whether that's just potentially loose wording or whether that's accurate, because I would have thought or anticipated that the board would essentially meet maybe at least every quarter. I suppose where I'm coming from is we know we have a challenge with our leisure centres at the moment. That's shown in the performance numbers, that's shown in the budget. Do we feel that 6 months meeting is frequent enough to give you oversight and to drive that performance that we would be looking for?
Yeah, well, it says it meets at least every 6 months. So if there's an issue in between, then it will meet again. And I have my executive briefings every 2 to 3 weeks at which any issues are brought forward. And if I think there is a problem, then we will raise it with the board. But I'm more than happy to review the 6 months, but in reality, it's more.
Yeah, so we've been meeting every other month. Yeah, so it is. We do meet regularly. It's just that's the way the specification's written. Just that it's a minimum of, but we do meet every month. So we generally meet, do 4 meetings a year with a full agenda, but we meet in between times to discuss specific issues such as resourcing, budgets, and other things.
Thank you. That's fine. That's what I imagined, but it's not quite what it said. I think the other areas I wanted to look at, also I suppose looking on leisure centres, we've got a target membership. Is that based about us trying to be financially sustainable? Where's that number coming from, or is it just a legacy number that we're starting with and we're going to evolve over time?
It is a legacy number that we started with. But everything that we're trying to do, we're trying to make it cost neutral. So when we look at targets and what we want to happen and how we want to balance it off, that is taken into consideration as well.
Just to add something. Yeah. We've had Councilmember mentioned about Alliance Leisure. So they've come in. They've not only had a look at the capital programme, but they've also had a look at the demand for the service, potential demand in the area. So that gives us a really good indication of where we're to invest our resources and time and effort. And memberships was one of those things that we could target our resources and efforts to get more members in. So the targets in future will represent what potential there is as well in our area.
Thank you. And I did have one other note, but I can't see where I referenced it from, or maybe it was just me thinking, following on from the report. I just wondered what your views were of the Cosy Homes in Lancashire scheme. I don't think it's mentioned explicitly in the report. I think it was my reflections on reading the popularity of the other home energy programmes, and what your view was on that scheme.
I think anything that helps people is beneficial, and I know it's a Lancashire-wide scheme, and we are part of it, and it's a difficult area, but I do think it benefits our residents.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Snape, over to you.
On page 32, deliver the home energy support scheme. I would have thought in the world that we're in that probably, if it was promoted in the right way, that probably would be inundated with referrals and stuff. So I just wonder how is that being promoted, and is there anything that members can be doing to refer residents that I can think of people that we meet when we're out door knocking and talking to people, and they might benefit from advice or promoting in newsletters and things like that, really, because I think that's a really important thing that the council's doing. Thanks.
Keep pressing the wrong button, I do. The information is on the website under the cost of living part that we have on the website that lists all the help. The person that does it has only actually been in post quite recently, and she's been going out. I know she went to the Duke Street hub opening to get to know people, but I'm more than happy for him to send some information to all members so you can sort of spread the word. But it only really started in October, so she's only just sort of up and running and getting established with who's who. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Does anybody have any further questions? Councillor Singh?
Just a quick one on the delivery of the borough anti-social behaviour action plan. Does that include working with Chorley Inspire? And if so, what do they do to get involved?
Yes, so Chorley Inspire are helping us with our outreach work. So I know there's a paper coming to not next week, the week after, to talk about our outreach work. But they're supporting with the delivery to look at. So we're asking them to visit particular areas where we've had concern with antisocial behaviour, to promote diversionary activities, but also to bring people in through to the centre. They're also supporting us, particularly difficult cases that have gone a bit through the criminal youth diversionary system, and with the hope that they don't go down the criminal route. So they're doing some intense work with individuals that we've had problems with in the town centre as well.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay, I have to say we're at the end of the discussion on this item, so please can we note the report? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Item 5, UK Shared Prosperity Funding, pages 3 to 14 of your agenda supplement. I invite Councillor Wilson, Executive Member for Resources, back to the table to present the report. Michelle Horrocks, Head of Economic Growth, and Justina Marr, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, I apologise if I have not, Partnerships Delivery Officer, are in attendance to assist. I'd like to thank Councillor Wilson for stepping in for Councillor Bradley and covering for him once again.
Always happy to cover for the leader. I have to do it too often. The report is obviously important in terms of measuring where we are up to with our UK SPF work. And just to remind members, as it says outlined in the papers, this was started in 2022, effectively to 25, so it's 3 years project. And as it says there on paragraph 7, we got £4.2 million through the UK SPF and £400,000 in the REPF, which is the Rural Enterprise Prosperity Fund. So two pots of money there that are available to the council. And what the Department of Levelling Up asks is that councils develop an investment plan, and the investment plan sets out your expected outputs and achievements in terms of what you've achieved. But what's interesting in the report is it does say to be proportionate, and I think probably encouraging councils not to get carried away or be too ambitious. But I think a lot of the work set out in the investment plan and under the council's remit are work that perhaps focus where the Chorley Council was already doing something, as it were, so had ambitions, and the funding and the areas that it's meant to cover sort of dovetails quite neatly with what the council was doing. So, in terms of the progress, you can see in Appendix A, you can see the list of projects, and as it says in the report and as it's detailed there are a number of ways in which this is being monitored and checked upon. So firstly, if we look there again, just to sort of re-emphasise, the paragraph 16 there mentions about the key themes, priorities which were identified, and then the outcomes and outputs that follow, and that's what's, as you see, is in Appendix A. And key to this obviously is making sure we get the money spent. It is important that we do that, and one of the pieces of information news that evolved after it was announced was that initially we thought perhaps you won't be able to actually roll money over from one year to the next, but now obviously we can, which is helpful, and that allows us to have some flexibility. However, the budget that's set for your third year, as it says in the report, does depend on your performance so far as well, so it's not just a question of you can just roll everything over and spend it all towards the end. So I think that's important in terms of, again, monitoring and looking at what's being achieved, is that we do make progress and we have to move at relative pace. We can't just sit on our hands. But the good news is we are moving in a number of areas, and I think on I'll just make sure I find the right reference point. If we go to Appendix B, just flicking through the report there, it does mention a number of projects that we are working on. It mentions perhaps why some have been slightly delayed, such as the work around the bus station and the information point and so on, but we know that's coming on stream now. And it also mentions some of the work that we're doing in commissions. So we've got a number of there dealing with vulnerable groups and those who need extra support and help. So again, that's the work that we'll see come through as time moves over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. And then there are those funds that have been directed towards extra capacity here at the council, such as, like it says, the events officer and so on. So I think it's a mixed package in terms of the programme. In terms of evaluating that, clearly, as I say, the report does set out where we are up to at the moment, and equally, we need to make sure that there's that is being monitored very closely, and the governance is there, and that's referred to there on paragraph 22. You can see that it's got senior officers in a number of the directorates to actually oversee this. It also reports into, obviously, the leader brief, and likewise to the executive members. So the number of people with oversight in terms of the delivery to make sure that we do get these projects off the ground, in some cases, or those that are off the ground, to be progressed and to achieve our outcomes. And obviously that monitoring report, as it says, I think the department demands something every 6 months, but obviously it's going to, as it says there, it's going to be more, it'll be more than that and more regular than that, we'll see. And the other thing that's worth noting as well is the department will also change slightly some of the expectations as we move along. So it's not a question of just one project is done. As the project goes along, perhaps some of the expectations or some of the targets may change as well within that as we move along. So there is some flexibility there, which again needs to be reported back regularly so that members know that we are on target. And of course, the department knows that the money is being invested and what the outcomes are. So overall, Chair, I think this is very much about that sort of review, analysis, and measurement of where we're up to. I don't think the merits of each project are up for debate or discussion as such. But I am, having spoken to Alistair, having spoken to our officers, and having seen the report and so on, I believe that we've done well in taking this opportunity, the money that's available, and getting these projects moving and moving quickly. Like I say, there's been some that are slightly delayed, but I do believe making good progress, and I expect we will be hitting our predicted outcomes as per the table on Appendix A, and hopefully we'll see a lot of benefit and improvements in services in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any questions, Councillor Lees?
Yeah, page 14. Sorry, yeah, page 14. The summary of expenditure to date, we're looking at a budget of 4,212. Well, it's 4 million. We've only spent 804. Are we expecting that to have a surge later in the year?
Yes, is the answer, because if we look at a number of the schemes, I think I mentioned one was the bus station. You look at things like even the path at King George's playing field, like I mentioned that because it's in my ward, so I know about it. There's a number of other elements there that, again, if you go back to Appendix A, you can see that some of those schemes are just starting to be up and running, just being implemented. So I'd imagine, you're absolutely right, Councillor Lees, that the momentum in spend, as it were, will come through as we go along and peak. And that's the reason why I mentioned that issue of the rollover of the money, because there was, I think, a fear at the start of the project that it was going to be, by the end of the year, you have to spend, so much by so much. That's a bit more flexibility there. So, yes, is the answer to your question. We have spent already nearly £1 million, but obviously there's significant amounts more to come through. But you will see that, particularly, I think, with work that we're doing as well, supporting businesses and so on, and the grant schemes that are there as well. So, yeah, I expect it to pick up quite sharp as we go through 24 and into 25.
To pick up to the £4 million? Yeah.
If it's government money, I intend to spend it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Anybody? No. I only had a couple of reflections. For me, I think it's absolutely right. I don't think it's for Scrutiny to make a judgment on the priorities that have been chosen. I think our job here is to look at the performance of those And I suppose when we get to the end of the programme, and if a new programme comes forward, that is possibly the point to look at what did the council feel it did well, what would it potentially do different. So I think this is very much really an opening report of this first time it's come here. What does it mean? I think we've had discussions prior to the meeting of when we think the future reporting date would be. I think I'm going to add that as a recommendation, but hopefully that is acceptable and will be workable for you. So which I'll add in a second unless there are any further reflections or questions. Actually, I think it's very much an introductory paper really this time, isn't it? I think for us. Okay, thank you. So I would say we're now at the end of the discussion on this item. So the recommendations are, number one, to note the monitoring requirements set out by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities as part of the UK Shared Prosperity Programme. And in relation to recommendation 2, to make further recommendations on the Council's approach to meeting the monitoring and evaluation requirements of the programme, I propose the following approach. That the Overview and Scrutiny Committee plays a key role in the future monitoring of the Council's UK Shared Prosperity Fund programme, and that it is incorporated into the Committee's future work plan with updates aligned to the formal reporting schedule for the Council's UK SPF returns. It is anticipated that this will be on a 6-monthly basis. So if everybody is content with that, we will note those extra recommendations. Hopefully that will work for Councillor Bradley. Thank you. So item 6, any urgent business previously agreed with the chair? I have no urgent items, so I declare the meeting closed. I thank everybody for their attendance, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Murray for their time for us, and look forward to seeing you all again in a couple of weeks.